Hey guys, Skipflack here. I just wanted to remind you that there's a couple more days to enter in our 1,000 download milestone giveaway that we're doing on our Facebook page. If you don't know, we're giving away a Cthulhu dice tray along with some pretty cool dice and a summer-themed dice bag. All you have to do is follow the link that I'll leave in the description and enter in that way. Good luck, and as always, enjoy this episode of the Crithalla podcast. Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to the Crithalla podcast. I am your host, Skipflack, also known as Dan, and I'm joined by my outstanding co-host here. We'll start with Stavi. So up, Stavi? What's up, brother? How are you?
Outstanding. I'm doing good.
Outstanding.
No, I'm doing good, Dan. I'm doing all right.
Very good. Very good.
It's been a cold week, you know?
Yeah.
It's been a cold week.
Up on the mountain all by yourself, right? The Grand Wizard.
The Grand Wizard's Tower. I should not call myself a Grand Wizard.
I shouldn't have said that either.
No, I'm doing good, man. And welcome back, everybody.
Yeah, hell yeah. And we're also joined by our other co-hosts. We have Cosmic Key. Mike, what's up, brother? How are you?
I'm pretty outstanding. I'm not in a mountain, and and I don't want to risk saying something else bad too. That's wrong. But I'm doing great.
Yeah, that's good.
Are you outstanding or are you in standing?
Maybe I'm in sitting.
Oh,
mind blown.
Well, yeah, cool. Yeah, welcome back, everybody, to the Crithalla podcast. If this is your first time here, welcome. And if you've ever been here before, welcome back. But if this is your first time, we run a show on here called Talking Tabletop, which is what we're doing today. If you don't know, we run this show in seasons. So every season there's 3 episodes, and each one of us, me, Stavi, and Mike, we all pick a tabletop role-playing game to discuss. And we discuss its mechanics, character creation, stuff like that. And at the end of the season, we are going to be putting up a poll on our social media, and whatever game that we discussed is most interesting to you or intriguing or you want to play it, you'll vote for that. And whichever game wins, we are going to be running a one-shot of that particular system. So we are finally on episode 3
of season 1, baby.
Season 1, baby. We did Morkborg. We did Mutants and Masterminds. And
awesome systems.
Yeah, they're amazing systems.
Yeah.
And we only have one more boy to get through.
Yeah, just
Whose
one.
turn is it today?
I'm the only
wonder.
one. I feel like, did you ever see play Ghost Recon?
I have not.
Like Wildlands, I think it was.
I have not.
Where they brought back Sam Fisher for one of the missions from Splinter Cell.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, they actually got Jeremy Ironsides or whatever his name is to come in and voice Sam Fisher again. And they talk about Solid Snake, and they talk about Gabe from Siphon Filter, and what's her name? His Sam Fisher's contact, the woman who he speaks to. I forget her name is. I wanted to say
Cortana?
Diane, but I know that Diane's from Hitman. Cortana is from that's from Conker's Bad Fur Day. That's a completely different.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a different.
I thought it was from Spyro.
He looks like a big giant of poop, right? Cortana, right?
Yeah, Cortana,
Yeah.
No, but anyway, he goes, then it's only me. I'm the only one. Because he mentions 2 other ones, and then he's... Anyway, I'm the last one.
You are the last one.
I'm the last boy.
In fact, you are. That is true.
I am the last boy.
You are the boy.
Today, for closing out the season, we're gonna close out pretty strongly, I think. Because in my mind, and I might be a little bit biased,
okay,
but this is the pinnacle of, this is exemplary of what a old school Renaissance OSR game should be. This is the gold standard, in my opinion. And I know I'm hyping it up. I even did an entire unboxing of it, but today we're talking about old school essentials.
Old school essentials,
Woo!
baby.
Yes.
I would agree too. It really is the pinnacle of OSR. I really enjoy the system. We have all played it, all three of us, actually.
Yep.
Stavi ran a game, and the two of us, along with a couple of other of our friends, we've played it. So we kind of know the gist, but I know some of you don't know OSR style games, so we'll definitely be going in depth on how this all works for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like this, if you wanted to break away from the more modern concepts of tabletop RPGs and sort of like delve a little bit deeper into the roots of the old school without having to break out, your wallet and your bank account and put up a second mortgage in your house to afford like original, like advanced D&D books.
Yeah.
OSR or OSC rather, this is the perfect gateway to get into that. Truly it is, I think.
Definitely. I agree.
Couple caveats though. We are not going to be talking about any of the supplementary stuff, which they do have a lot of. There's a lot of adventures that they've made that are officially licensed by Necrotic Gnome and Exalted Funeral and the other publishers and creators, Gavin Norman's company and everything. We're not going to be talking about any of that. They do have a magazine collection that they are working on currently. It's called Carcass Crawler, and they are extremely high quality magazines.
God, I love them.
They're so good. And furthermore, we are also not going to be talking about the overall construction and quality of the print. The reason why, and actually, I'm just going to mention it right now. The quality is immaculate.
Yeah.
It is easily the greatest, highest quality books I've ever seen for a tabletop game.
One of my favorite books I've ever owned.
Let alone for a book. I have a $45 or $55 copy of The Silmarillion on my bookshelf.
Right.
It's a hardcover book. It's still not as high quality as this gaming book is.
Damn. That's pretty good.
Just throwing that out there. The reason why I don't want to bring that up is because we're not disputing the quality of the print. We're disputing the quality of the content in the books.
Yeah, right.
It's the content in the book that matters less than like the content or the quality of the build itself.
Exactly.
So that's just a caveat.
All right. So yeah, all right, cool. So everyone, let's take a seat. We're here in the game room for all of our YouTube viewers. We always have our setting, and we're back in our game room once again. It's all Papa Squat, and let's discuss old school essentials.
Yeah, let's talk tabletop.
Yeah, baby.
Cue the thunder.
Yeah.
So I am the professor today as we discuss the nuances of old school essentials.
Yeah. So let's start with like a brief synopsis of the game in general.
Yeah,
I know it's
so
a lot, but
no, I mean, listen, if you've played Dungeons and Dragons, any iteration of Dungeons and Dragons, then you know exactly what you're getting into with this. There are just a few critical differences that make this game, in my opinion, objectively, just a better overall experience, not only for the players, but for the DMs as well to run the games.
yeah.
They do use the Open Game License version 1.0A, which I think was from the year 2000. It was like a copyright 2000 from Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah,
1.0A.
2000, 2001, something like that, or 2003.
Something like that.
I forget.
Yeah. So like we're talking about an OGL that is like 23 years old.
Yeah.
From the long ago.
From the ye olden days.
Back in my
From the far, far away.
Back in my day. We didn't roll dice, we carved acorns.
We didn't roll dice, we jumped down a hill, and whatever side landed, that's how far we moved.
Yes! Depending on how many bones we broke determined our roll. So there are a couple things that you need to know about old school essentials. There is a basic, and then there is a advanced. Now, for those of you who are familiar with like 1970s, 1980s fantasy role-playing games, specifically Dungeons and Dragons, after Advanced D&D, they made Basic Expert with Moldvay and Tim Cook. They made Moldvay Cook BX versions of D&D, which was basically sort of like a boiled down version of Advance to allow new players and even younger audiences to get into it with very, very simple, like ease of access. Mm-hmm. And that is what this is. This OSE fantasy or basic fantasy and advanced fantasy are literally Basic Expert D&D. So yeah, I mean, it has streamlined core rules, which if you've ever read the original books, even as a GM, you have to look in the player's handbook to find rules that should be for the GM.
Yeah.
So like not everything is self-contained in one book for the DM to just have on their table and just flip through. They actually have to be like, hey, can I see the player's handbook real quick? And then like go through it and like look up certain things.
Right.
So Gavin Norman and the team over at Necrotic Gnome did an amazing job at streamlining the core rules, both for the referee or the game master, as well as the player. There are two different books, player and referee book. So there's a basic, there's an advanced. The basic just has your basic classes, right? It doesn't have any of the advanced rules. It doesn't have separate race and separate class. Back in the day, this may surprise a lot of people, but for certain demi-human races like dwarves, elves, and halflings, your race was your class.
Right.
So like, for example, an elf would be like a combination of a magic user and a fighter. A halfling would be like a combination, I think it was a thief and a fighter.
Yeah.
I believe it was a thief-fighter combo.
Yeah.
And the dwarf was also sort of like a thief and something. He was a high constitution. So I don't exactly remember what it was. But anyway, yeah, it's literally just old school gaming with a modern facelift. That was absolutely necessary.
That was one of the things that blew my mind when we first started playing. I was like, coming as like a 5th edition player mostly, I was like, oh, your race is also your class? What? Huh? That like blew my mind. I was like, okay, so I'm just a dwarf. Gotcha. Cool.
And they did change that with the advanced book, because with basic had just race as class.
Yeah.
When the expert rule set came out, I think the expert rule set took things from advanced Dungeons and Dragons and implemented them in a way that worked with like the basic format. So if you do advanced fantasy, there is optional rules where you can have a elf cleric or a dwarf fighter specifically, or like a halfling magic user, or I don't think halflings could be magic, but there are like race and class restrictions, but you could split them up. You don't have to be that. And you do get racial bonuses as well. I think dwarves get like additional constitution. Elves probably get higher either dexterity or intelligence. It's one of those two.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's back during my time of AD&D 2nd edition, where, you know, only humans could be necromancers and only humans could be paladins. So they changed that into, you know, just racial limitations on classes.
It was like a special unlock.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing too, because in the old school, if you wanted to play like some of the expert classes like acrobat, assassin, bard, I think monk maybe might be one of them, or like a ranger, like unless it specifically says elf, dwarf, halfling, half elf, it's assumed that you're a human with that class. Whereas like in more modern RPGs, like I could be a Kenku and be a monk, or I could be like, I don't know, like a tiefling bard, you know.
Yeah.
But back then, if you were a bard, you were also a human, because only humans could be other race or other classes, not the other races.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, but they do give you the freedom to also put it more closer to like modern sensibilities, where like if you want that extra added layer of role play of being a demi-human, but also being like the class that you want, you could also do that too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have 2 questions. One's very important, and the other one's equally as important. But the first one, are there rules? Stop laughing at me. I'm questioning.
Sorry.
Not in the game room, sir?
Quiet down in the class. Sorry.
You made him mad.
Sorry, teach.
He's got a sphere of annihilation, man.
No. And an Okami game sphere.
Yes,
I do have one of those.
Game sphere. Now, both my questions are about mechanics. So my first one, are there rules for Thaco?
Oh my god. To hit AC 0, for those who may be unfamiliar with what Thaco is, It's a very old and antiquated way,
Or as
of
some
doing-
would say, better.
I mean,
Some
look,
would. Some
some-
people
I just
still
said some.
debate to this
Some
day.
would say better.
Some
So-
people still debate to this day that it is the best way.
Yeah, those are people who lived through that era and they know nothing else.
Yeah,
Look,
that's true.
there
How
are rules
dare
for.
you?
Look, I just want to break down to people what exactly THAC0 is, because I feel like
Please.
people hear THAC0 like on D&D podcasts or on the YouTube channels or whatever, or magazines, and they're like, oh my god, it's so primitive and there's like a lot of math involved and it's very difficult. It's really not, dude. Like
Yeah.
each character class has a THAC0 chart, and it literally tells you like what you need to roll based on what the enemy's AC is. So let me just explain what THAC0 is. Basically, it stands for 2-hit AC 0.
Okay.
Every character has an attack matrix if you look at their classes, okay? So if you look at, for example, a cleric, right? It says THAC0 in OSC. It'll say the number. To hit AC 0, you have to roll a 19. Okay? That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then it gets easier. As you hit like level 5, then it goes down 2 and it becomes 17, and then eventually 14, then 12. So there is a chart, and to hit AC 0 is kind of like in the middle. Now, if a character has armor and they have like an AC of like 2, then your THAC0 goes down 2 from 19. You have to roll 19 to hit 0, but if their AC is 2, then it's 17 to hit. And as it goes higher and higher, if it goes from 0 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, you just add that to your D20 roll, and that pretty much tells you what you have to roll to hit them. There is extra steps involved, and I understand it can become cumbersome.
Yeah.
But it's actually a really cool system when you take into account that back in the day there were also specific weapons that would harm different types of armor differently.
Yeah, right.
So like bludgeoning would actually do more damage against like plate mail armored people, and stabbing would do more against chainmail, and slashing would do more against leather. Like there were like layers of stuff to it, but it's become streamlined ever since then.
Yeah, right.
I guess what I'm getting to is that you don't have to play with THAC0.
Well, that goes to my second one. Then, I just wanted to hear about THAC0 again. Raise a glass. But the second question: how are the rules different than other modern games of the same type, like 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and also how do they streamline or advance old school rules and keep the feel of the old school rules, but streamline it for modern sensibilities?
Yeah.
Okay, well, just real quick, going back to THAC0.
Please.
They have ascending AC. Ascending AC is what 5th edition and all pretty much modern MMOs have, where they have an AC of like 18. You roll a d20, you try to hit 18 or get higher, plus your dice modifiers or attack modifiers or whatever, and if you hit it or go above, that's a hit. Mm-hmm. That's what I use. I mean, ascending AC is just so easy and so intuitive that like there's really no reason to go back to THAC0, because it's just extra work for extra work.
Combat's
sake.
way quicker. Yeah.
It's so much quicker, and that also ties into like your question regarding like how do they take old school rules and adapt it to more modern sensibilities. The biggest thing, in my opinion, is the excellent work that Gavin Norman and his team have done, organizing all of the rules and putting them in sections that make sense, and the legibility of the layout of the pages just make sense. It's very easy to find what it is that you're looking for if you have any questions or disputes regarding this, specific rules. So that genuinely makes it really simple.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, there's a lot of different mechanics that we can talk about that people may want to hear about. Like, For example, character creation is something that we're probably going to talk about.
Yeah.
We're absolutely going to talk about. There is ability score modifiers, right? Like you're used to in D&D, like if you have a 12, you get a +1, right? Like if you have a 12 in intelligence, now you have a +1 for your intelligence rolls. It's a little bit different for old school. There is a chart, and we can actually put it up right on the blackboard right here.
Yep. Put it up for YouTube.
Yep, there you go. So for your YouTube viewers, go ahead and check that out. So we'll look at strength, for example. Strength on the character sheet has a couple of things that don't exist in 5th edition. One of them is your 2-hit and damage melee modifiers. The higher your strength, the higher chance you have to hit, and the higher chance you have for damage. So this is applied to both attack and damage rolls with melee weapons. Mm-hmm. If you have a 9 through 12 in your strength, which is about average for old school, you don't get any modifier. If you have a 6 or 8, you get a -1. If you have 13 to 15, you have a +1. And then that scales all the way down from 3 to 18. You can only have a maximum of 18 for any stat naturally. Mm-hmm. Strength also has the ability to what they used to do back in the day called open doors. Not everybody could just like.
How crazy!
I know, dude. No, like not just like opening doors, like turn the door handle. No.
Yeah.
So back in the day when you were exploring dungeons, I should also mention that this game is heavily dungeon crawl based.
Yeah.
You can role play. You can do open world exploration. There are rules for wilderness exploration, all that stuff in this book. And even waterborne exploration, flying, there's vehicle combat, there's all types of stuff in here.
Hex crawling. That was a big one that I had to learn when we were playing hex crawling.
I love doing hex crawls, dude. I really do. But anyway, so back in the day when you would do dungeons, you may find a stuck wooden door. Or you might find a portcullis that has slammed shut behind you, trapping you down a hallway, and you don't have access to the lever, and you don't have access to the key, and you can't get this door open. So your barbarian or your fighter or whoever is martially inclined would have to roll a strength check, basically. And so to open doors, it goes anywhere from 1 in 6 all the way to 5 in 6, if you have 18, of course.
Yeah.
And for that, you would roll a single d6. And if you hit that number, or I don't remember if it's, you have to roll that number or under.
Right.
Yeah, so you have to roll a 1. You have to roll a 2 or a 1. You have to roll a 1, 2, or 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if you roll a 6, that doesn't count.
You have either like a 1 in 6 chance or a 2 in 6 chance or a 3 in 6 chance.
Right, yeah. But that was how you would open stuck doors back in the day. Yeah. I mean, there's so much that is like so different from like the old school to the new school. Like the biggest one that people are going to get turned off on, and I know this for sure, is that there is no skill checks the way that we know it now in 5th edition.
What?
I know,
but
dude.
Teacher,
what do you mean?
Teacher, how do I do things?
Oh my god,
how do I tie a rope?
I don't know how. I don't have skills.
What or not?
What do you mean I can't do an Arcana check? No, look, listen, that doesn't exist in old school. Okay.
No, it does not.
It does not. Now, to be fair, if you look at the, there are rules for doing ability checks. Okay, you can actually do like ability rolls, and it's on the DM screen. I actually don't have. Actually, I might have it here. Hang on. Combat. It's monsters. Player. Ability score. There is a thing for doing optional rules for ability checks. And it's on the DM screen. I know that for sure. They have it plastered right in the middle. But it's not like there's no specific skills that you level up in. There's no Arcana. There's no Survival. There's no anything like that. The only class that really does have that is Thief. And even the thief stuff is a little bit different than what you guys might be used to, like entirely. Again, a lot of it is based on percentile. A lot of it is based on a D6 roll. And that's about it. And the only things that thieves can do is like climb sheer surfaces, find and removing traps, hearing for noises, hiding in shadows, moving silently, and opening locks, and picking pockets. Not every character can do that.
It's very bare bones. That's one thing I note. Like I feel like 5th edition is definitely built on a lot of role play. And again, you can role play in OSE. Obviously, we did it. You definitely can, but there's not like skill checks to do so or anything like that. It's kind of just like you're talking, and then like if you decide to like anger an NPC, there's no like checks. You're just like getting them mad. Like there's no unless you could talk your way out of it like on your own. Like that's what's really cool. It's definitely more. When you're looking at a character sheet, it's more about the dungeon delving and the dungeon exploration and your hex crawling exploration than your roleplay stats,
Yeah,
For
everyone had more of a purpose. Like,
Yeah.
I know there's the role-playing trope, it's like, you guys don't have a healer? You need a healer.
Yeah.
But that flies a little less now, because in modern games, everyone has a bit of healing. But back then, you needed a healer. Or you, only thieves were able to pick locks. If you were a fighter, you would see the lock and be like, I guess I punch it. Like, you just don't know how to pick it.
Right.
Well, so I will say the one thing that OSC has done, and I'm not sure if this was available in Basic and Expert, every class technically can try to do very basic, basic skills, I guess you can say, right? Like every class can try to open door. Every class can try to, Christ, what is it? I think it's just like listening.
Mm-hmm.
But because you're not skilled in any of those things, you only really get a 1 in 6 chance of actually pulling it off. Whereas more specialized classes will be able to do those things so much easier.
Right, exactly.
So much easier.
If I remember from back in the day, no, like other classes could only like in like AD&D 2nd edition, only the rogues and the rangers were able to move silently and hide in shadows. That's it.
Oh yeah, for those, sure. Hide in shadow. Actually, I don't think I have a character sheet in front of me. Oh no, I do. Give me 1 second, because I am curious about this now. Right. So there are a few like exploration skills that every character can do. One of them is listening at the door, right? Another one is opening the stuck door, which is based on strength. The listening to door is 1 in 6, or if the class specifies that you have higher. Finding secret doors is a big thing, because the idea is like, you're supposed to be searching. And finding a room trap is the other thing. Of course, it's either a 1 in 6 or higher if you're like a thief or a dwarf or something like that. So everybody does have the opportunity to try, that whole 5th edition trope where it's like, you can try.
Yeah.
You could do that in old school also, but you have to understand, like, if that is a failure, it could result in total party death.
That's even better than like older editions too, because in the edition I first started, only elves could find secret doors. That's it. Just elves.
Yeah, so if you didn't have an elf, then you were stuck.
Nope. And you just walked right by it. The exit was right there, and you just whoosh.
Yeah.
And there were dungeons that were designed, and you see this a lot in if you've ever played Daggerfall, like the second Elder Scrolls game. The way that they set up their dungeons, they made it like intentionally. I mean, the dungeons are randomly generated, except for a few specific ones that are for like the main story or whatever. Mm. But you will literally go into a dungeon, and it will be one room as soon as you walk in, and then like 2 hallways branching off from the left and the right, and then they will like connect to another room that goes downstairs together, and then that's the entire dungeon. And you're like, what the hell? What you don't realize is that there's a secret door, and that secret door like unlocks, at least another hour and a half of exploration that you had no idea was there.
Right.
It's like playing creative mode in Minecraft, where you could like bring the camera like out of the world, and you see all the caverns that were procedurally generated. Like, wow, I should have went there.
Yeah.
And there is like a definitely a thing with Minecraft like that too, where you'll dig forever and ever and ever and ever, and you're like, man, I'm not hitting anything. I'll turn back, and then you're 1 block away from hitting like an abandoned
Yep.
mine shaft.
You just had to turn left, and it's like diamonds. You're like, damn it.
Right. So, but yeah, as far as the character sheet is concerned, you do have the ability to. Everybody has the ability.
Yeah. So speaking of character sheets and stuff, how there's a lot going on with these kinds of characters. So what is involved in making a character in OSE? Because I know when we did it, I didn't really research it too much, and we just did a session 0, and you were like, and you put this number in this slot, and this and that, and roll this one, and I'm like, okay, I'll just follow you. So how do you really make a character in OSE?
Yeah, so there are a couple of recommendations in terms of, so first off, you have to roll ability scores, okay? It's not like in 5th edition where you're like, I want to be a drow artificer. Like, you don't really get to choose your class necessarily in Old School Essentials. What happens is, and in Old School D&D in general, you roll 3d6 down the line, which means you roll for strength, intelligence, wisdom, dex, con, and I think charisma in that order.
Yeah.
3d6. No 4d6 and drop the lowest. No re-rolls on 1. No nothing like that. No superhero nonsense. Like, you literally roll 3d6 and that's what you get. And you plug in those numbers. Those numbers will determine what class and or race, but mostly class, you're going to be able to play. Some classes have restrictions.
Prerequisites. Actually.
There are prerequisites for certain classes. So, like, for example, if you want to play a barbarian, the minimum requirement is that you need to at least have a 9 in your dexterity. It's very possible you roll 3 1s for all of your abilities, and then your character is pretty much worthless. I will say, and they say this in the rules too, that like with subpar characters, as they call it, those characters are basically, they're non-viable. If you happen to roll a character with like really bad ability scores, or like, if you roll an 8 or even less than 8 in every score, or an extremely low rating in one ability, it is up to the GM to decide whether or not you want to discard that character and start again.
Which is nuts. I love that.
Yeah, basically the idea is like you're starting from level 0 and you're propelling into like an adventurer class.
Yeah.
So, like, the idea is, like, you could roll 15, 16, 11, 19, or whatever. I think 18 is the highest. 18, and then you can get, like, a 3. Or you can get, like, a 4 in Constitution.
Yeah.
Or a 3 at Constitution. So, if you get a really low roll like that, it's assumed that, like, your character attempted to go on an adventure, and they just straight up died. So now you have to make another character before you even get to decide what class they are. Speaking of the class, after you roll the ability scores, then you choose your class. It is at that point that you're able to determine what your ability scores grant you. There are also I think they're called prime requisites, I want to say. Prime requisites. So for example, like a bard, its prime requisite is charisma. And if you have a high charisma score, you actually get XP bonuses. Charisma, I mean, it's not necessary to have the prime requisite technically, because unlike with 5th edition, when you do spells, it's just saving throws for your enemy. You don't like roll and then you add your charisma modifier to your magic roll or whatever. It's you just cast a spell and they have to save. Right. So yeah. After that, then you do you adjust your ability scores. You can, if you wish, you can raise your prime requisite by lowering a non-prime requisite ability score. Mm-hmm. Basically, for every 2 points that another skill you don't want is lowered, you're able to pump up your prerequisite 1 point. Then there's modifiers, of course, as everybody's aware of.
Yep.
But it doesn't work in the same way. And again, you could reference that piece of paper right there if you want to get a deeper look on the chalkboard.
Put the modifiers up.
Yep, that's all the modifiers. Some of them modify your AC. Some of them modify how many hit points you get when you level up and you roll your hit die. Some of them determine your charisma, and that's like a whole nother mechanic because retainers are a thing in this game.
Yeah.
And then right there in the bottom, you can see prime requisite for modifiers, and then it's like plus 5%, plus 10%. After you do that, they tell you to note the attack values if you're using THAC0. Don't do that.
Yeah.
just use ascending AC and call it a day. Like that is the one thing that I will take from like modern D&D and modern role-playing games is the ascending AC is a godsend.
Yeah.
Next up is determining your saving throws and your class and race abilities. Saving throws are very different in this game than they are in modern D&D. In modern D&D, your saving throws are like, oh, let me make a wisdom saving throw. Let me make a dexterity saving throw. No.
Not in this one.
Not in this one. This is not based off of like your abilities. You have saving throws, and they're mostly magic for the most part. So let me break it down for you. You have saving throws versus death / poison. They share the same saving throw.
Mm-hmm.
You have a saving throw versus magic wands. You have a saving throw versus paralysis / petrification. Saving throw versus breath attacks. And saving throws against spells, magic rods, and staves.
Very specific.
It's very specific because it's meant to be vague enough for the GM to be like, oh, well, you have a giant rolling boulder coming down, the hallway, and you guys have to duck out of the way. Like, I guess you could do a dexterity save where, like, you have to roll a d20 and you have to roll your ability score or under in order to survive. So if you have, like, a 14 in dex, you have to roll a 14 or under. But he may also be like, oh, save versus death.
Yeah, literally.
Like straight up save versus death. Because if you roll out of the way, or if you don't roll out of the way, it's not like, 5th edition, you get crushed by a boulder. Oh, yeah, take, 66 damage. No, like you're dead.
Yeah. That's how I died in our game. Literally, it was a save versus. It was just straight up save versus death, I believe.
It was save versus death.
I was being attacked by what was the sword? It was a
sentient sword.
A sentient sword, and when it makes an attack on you, it's literally save versus death. And I failed the save, and I literally just died right then and there. We had like 7 sessions, and one hit killed me.
Yeah, and it'd be like that sometimes.
Yeah.
It also, it helps that, like, you have to make sure that your DM is not like a narcissist.
Yeah.
or like somebody who, like, their main intention is to just kill all their players.
Yeah.
Because the way your death played out, it was actually really cool. Not only did you take it really, really well, but, like, as a GM, I'm kind of proud of myself for playing it into your backstory.
Yeah, it worked out really, really well.
Yeah, so, like, there was no animosity, and he was just able to roll up another character.
Yeah.
But save versus poison, literally you just die, unlike in 5th edition or any modern RPGs that I can think of, where instead of taking, 4d6 over the next 2 turns or 10 turns or whatever, if you spring a trap, like a poison mist or a poison cloud, or you step on a pressure plate and a poison dart right into your neck, like, you save versus that poison, or you straight up fall to the ground convulsing and your character dies.
Right.
It is very brutal. It is very brutal. There are more brutal systems like Morkborg.
Morkborg's a good one for that.
Yeah, Morkborg, like, you can literally step on a rusty nail and just die from tetanus or whatever.
And then you're one of the lucky ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Literally.
You got Alf easy, honestly.
Yeah. Congratulations, you won Morkborg.
Yeah.
So that's the saving throws, and then of course you have your hit points, which you roll when you first create your character. AC and Dex are still kind of tied together, so there's like an unarmored AC of 10, plus your Dex modifier determines what you are unarmored. Hit points is still based off of your Constitution. Attack bonus is still based off of your Strength, unless you're doing missile attacks, in which case it's based off of your Dex. For encounters, which is something that we could definitely get into too, they have optional rules for group encounter or group initiative or individual initiative. I personally like group initiative better than individual initiative. It just makes the game go so much faster with combat.
That's what we did, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, I'm glad it did, honestly.
Yeah.
Then there's a thing for charisma modifier for reaction rolls. Here's something that people need to get into their heads, and we talked about this in older episodes of DM Discuss, where like not every single encounter means that it's a combat.
Yeah.
You know, like you could run into a pack of wandering kobolds or goblins or orcs or whatever that are just kind of roaming through the woods, you know, scavenging for food or hunting deer for food or whatever. And they may see like your party, and depending on their reaction roll to seeing you, they may be completely uninterested. They have other shit they have to worry about. They're not going to deal with, 3 humans or, 5 humans in, their woods.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the exploration rules, which I mentioned before, with the 1 in 6 chance of being able to listen at doors, find secret doors, find room traps. And then there's, of course, you have to calculate your movement based on your encumbrance and all that stuff. So, and then it gets a little bit more granular when you talk about the specific classes. Because clerics at level 1 actually don't get any spells.
Yeah.
I think they can only turn undead. That's all they're really good for.
And that's literally it. Yeah.
That's literally it. And the reason for that is because as a level 1 cleric, the idea is you just left your chapel and decided to become an adventurer.
Yeah.
And like you still have yet to prove to your god that you're a warrior of their light or darkness or whatever. Yeah.
I played an acolyte.
Yes, that's an optional rule class from the magazines.
Yes, and it's very similar to like a cleric, where like at level 1, literally all you're doing is like attempting to turn undead, and then you have like some like support spells, like a rally or something to get like pluses to attack and stuff. But it's like literally level 1. It's like you have like, I think it was like a 10% chance to get it to work or something like that, or 20%. Like it's just not. It's not there.
Yeah, the trade-off with the acolyte compared to a cleric was that the acolyte had abilities that they could do at level 1, but their abilities never change as they level up.
Right.
The same thing with the magic user. They have an alternative called the mage, which is able to detect magic and do other things at level 1 and at will. They don't even expend spell points to do this.
Right.
The thing is, they don't have a spell book. They can only cast what they have unless they pick up magic scrolls or whatever, and then they can cast other magical things. But from level 1, you have options, but it becomes weaker as you level up.
Yeah, right.
It's good for just starting off. In fact, the game that I'm running right now, I'm forcing everybody to start at level 3 because we have a cleric.
Oh, perfect.
And we have a magic user, and they have access to 2 level 1 spells and 1 level 2 spell.
Nice.
Each.
Nice.
I believe so.
So I know I'd love to briefly touch this as well. I know in terms of movement, because I know we were just talking about movement. Yeah. There's different types of movement. You have like dungeon movement and like normal movement, and then you have like a thing called like exploration movement, right? Is that what it is? Or I forget exactly what it's called. When you're on your hex map.
Yeah, that would be wilderness adventuring.
Yeah. So wilderness adventuring, I feel like, is a lot different than like something that like 5th edition players would be used to. So do you want to briefly like touch on like wilderness and how that all works? Because it's completely different than like being in a dungeon. It doesn't work the same way.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit different. So with when you're running the game, I will let you know that the rules that we used in my game for exploring, like the hex crawl and all that stuff, that was all from legitimate old school D&D rule sets that I converted to work to basic expert. So hex crawl specifically is not actually in the game necessarily.
Oh, well, the wilderness travel is still a thing, though.
Yeah. So basically, this is how it works, and this is another reason why I love OSC, like a lot, because when they talk about like dungeon adventuring, wilderness, waterborne adventuring, they give you like a breakdown of the sequence of play per whatever time. So like dungeon is per turn, wilderness is per day, waterborne travel is per day. But anyway, wilderness. the players decide on the course that they want to travel for the day. So number one, at the beginning of the day, the players have to decide which direction they want to go. Second thing, the player determines whether the party gets lost. You could actually lose your direction. There is no like, oh, let me make a survival check and make sure we're following the sun or whatever. You know, things happen when you're traveling, 18, 19 miles a day. You can go off course by just a couple of feet in the beginning and then be miles off by the time you get to where you need to be. It just happens in real life. There's no, like, you can't just make a check in real life and be like, oh, I know exactly where I'm going. In the middle.
Geez, I thought about it for a second, and I think we're going northwest instead of northeast.
Yeah, and like, mind you, like it takes an entire day to travel. So like you will see the sun in different parts of the sky throughout the day. And I guess if you're paying super close attention, you can kind of determine which direction you're going, I guess.
Yeah.
But the idea is like you're out in the wilderness. People don't have the technology and the sensibilities that we have in the modern world where we can like identify where we're going more accurately than, back in medieval fantasy times.
Yeah.
But whatever. The third thing is the referee then has to make applicable wandering monster checks.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I love the wandering monster checks. I have entire books for wandering monsters. So that's basically how encounters work, and that is part of what Mike was asking before about how like the old school kind of streamlines is the wandering monsters is a good example of that, because you don't really need to plan encounters as a GM when your players are exploring either a dungeon or the wilderness. Now you can make scripted encounters if you want. Nobody's saying you can't.
Yeah.
But if they're traveling in the woods and only the woods, or if they're traveling in the mountains and only the mountains, as a GM, you can create a small list of creatures or individuals, maybe other mercenary groups or bandits or traveling merchants who may exist in that biome. Roll a wandering monster check, and if it succeeds and there is a wandering monster, then you can roll on your table to determine what monster that is and how many of them show up. Or nothing at all. You could be safe the entire day.
Yeah. It all depends upon the roll.
It really does. And then almost finally, the referee then describes the terrain that was passed through, any sites of interest that the party comes across, like maybe like an abandoned wagon or like a old rundown windmill or an old graveyard or something like that can like spark the players to go off the beaten path and kind of explore something. And that itself can turn into a whole campaign.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Which is, it's a lot of fun because it gives like, not everything feels on handrails, everything kind of feels random to a degree. And like, it helps the GM a lot with planning. I love OSC for that reason, because everything is just like you roll and then whatever pops up. Hey guys, this is what you find. This is what you see.
Yeah.
Oh, randomness is always fun.
Yeah. It definitely is.
I really like the whole wilderness rule set to OSC, because I really feel like for 5th edition, like, okay, right, like you could make a whole thing about like while you're traveling, like this thing could happen, this could happen, that could happen. Mm-hmm. But in my personal opinion, I feel like 5th edition doesn't really have like rules for travel, or like they do, but it's like, pretty, open-ended, where in OSC it's like you never know what's gonna happen. Like random encounters are a thing in 5th edition, but
sure,
OSC you have like random encounters, and it could be anything too. It could be any monster and anything. And what's cool is the monster could be friendly, the monster could be angry, the monster could be absolutely psychotic, and you don't know until you roll that dice. And it's a really, I really enjoy the wilderness travel in OSC.
And it doesn't hinge on any sort of challenge rating either.
Yeah,
correct.
Right.
Like you could just be camping, and something that you have no right fighting right now is just like, also a fire, and you're just fucked.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
That's the other beautiful thing about OSC too, is not everything is scaled to the player. Mm-hmm. That is one of the biggest missteps that people take with modern RPGs, is DMs especially will try so hard to make their fights balanced. The real world ain't balanced, dude. I'm sorry. Like, I know you play video games and board games and tabletop RPGs to escape reality, but like there has to be a level of fear. There has to be a level of risk involved. Like, for example, if you're traveling in the wilderness and you lose direction, and you're like, oh my god, I have no idea where we are. I guess we camp for the night here, not knowing where this area is really.
Yeah.
And then like a basilisk comes out, or like you disturb the slumber because you guys are merrymaking in the middle of the woods that nobody ever goes to, and they know not to, but your party doesn't.
Yeah.
Stay away from those woods. Those woods are dangerous. Don't camp there. Don't travel there, you know. And then your party winds up there, and now they're getting drunk, and they're starting campfires, and they're being loud, and they're cooking food, and they're creating all these smells and sounds. And then you wake up like a green dragon.
Yeah.
Or like something that is sleeping in its lair, like a mile away, and they come flying over and just burn the whole party.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to survive that. You have to be methodical.
Yeah, like most Friday 13th movies always start with someone like, you can't go to Camp Blood. Don't you know about Jason Voorhees? Listen to the guy and go somewhere else.
Listen to the guy. Go to a bed and breakfast.
Yeah, go somewhere else. Go to like Maine or Vermont.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even when I remember we were running into the Caves of Chaos, I remember. And on our travel, we just happened to accidentally disturb a freaking werewolf. Mm-hmm. And bro, at first level, we have no right fighting a freaking werewolf.
Not at all.
No silvered weapons. Nothing. Literally nothing. And it had like 3 wolf buddies on top of it. Like there was no, like, I don't know how we got through that. I forget exactly how we did.
You guys fled.
Yeah, oh, that's what it was. Yeah, we ran away. We just literally ran away.
You fled into the woods, and you managed to like lose them in the brambles and the thick shrubbery.
Yeah. And that's you never know what you're gonna find in the wilderness. You know,
and that's part of the risk and reward. You know.
Yeah.
And so with the wildering adventuring, there are like other things that you have to take into consideration, right? Because like you need food. You can forage, which is kind of cool. There are rules for foraging. And certain classes like rangers have better advantages for rolling for that. There's hunting. Now, resting is a really big thing. Unlike with 5th edition where it's like, oh, you know, we'll just rest for the day because we want to accelerate time, or we want our spell slots back, or we want, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
In the case of this, you actually suffer exhaustion. So as per the rules, all the characters must rest for 1 day per every 6 days of travel. Right. That doesn't mean one night. That means like you pretty much take your entire working day to just sit around lounging, doing whatever you want, making arrows, foraging for food, making sure you have campfire wood, whatever. Like you're literally sitting in spot for an entire day, just to make sure that you're not doing anything too strenuous so you can move on.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's visibility and wandering monsters and stuff like that, too. So,
yeah, wilderness is cool. I loved that. Was one of my favorite parts, honestly.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of just hex crawls in general.
Yeah.
I if anybody's interested, if you're curious about how I run my hex crawl stuff, I still have all of my original documents that I've created, and I'm willing to share that with you guys. If anybody is interested in any of that information, just let us know on the YouTube channel. I mean, I'll probably post like a link or something if anybody wants to see that stuff.
That's awesome.
Perfect.
So we've talked about rules. We've talked about exploration and how dangerous it is. Now, when the shit does hit the fan, how do you fight? What's combat like? Or do you just go like, well, we're screwed. It's a wolf.
Yeah, we're done now.
That was fun. New characters.
Yeah.
Rip them up. Who shred. So the player that I'm playing with right now, I told them that I was going to be ripping up their character sheets if their characters die. And they were like, oh, that's so badass, because they're only used to 5th edition, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And then I give the ripped pieces back to you. And then they were like, I'm going to make a collage out of all my dead characters.
Hell yeah.
That's the right
morbid
mentality.
And I love it.
Yeah. So, okay, I will caveat, I will preface encounters and combat with this. Pick your battles. Number 1, that's how combat works. You pick your battles. First off, you don't really level up from fighting monsters and defeating enemies in old school like you do in modern, because it focuses so heavily on the combat aspect, whereas old school is more about the exploration and the tension.
Mm-hmm.
So you get XP from gathering gold. It's 1 XP for every gold coin you bring out of the dungeon successfully to a safe haven.
Mm-hmm.
You can fight. Sometimes you don't have a choice, and you do get XP for it, but like the resources that you're using, like health potions, if any, spells, if any left, rations, bandages to stop bleeding, any of that stuff, like it's not worth the experience that you gain from killing or defeating a monster, which also includes sneaking around them or talking your way out of a situation counts as defeating them as well.
Yeah.
But if you do get into a fight, number one, initiative is done with a D6, not a D20. And the reason for that is because there's no individual initiative. It's one group, one group. When the two parties meet, the DM has to decide whether or not there is surprise. Okay? Each side that is not already aware of the other party's presence needs to roll a 1d6. Referee rolls for the monsters. One player will roll for the party as a whole, and that's usually the caller. And we haven't talked about the caller yet, but very briefly, it's basically the face of the party. The caller is the individual who is telling the GM specifically what everybody in the party is doing for their turn.
Mm-hmm.
They discuss amongst themselves, and the caller tells the GM. It just makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
So GM rolls for the monsters. One player will roll for the whole party. A result of a 1 or a 2 on a D6 means that side is surprised. Now, there are rules for both of them being surprised or one side being surprised. You basically get a surprise round. I'm sure you've heard of that. I don't think there's any rules for 5th edition for surprise rounds. I think that was something that we added in.
No, surprise is a thing, isn't it, Mike?
It's like an independent surprise round of thing, though.
I think for that, no. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, I know you would say, like, okay, you surprise, so you go first before we roll initiative. Was that a homebrew rule? I don't think so. Was it?
In like anything? Like in fifth ed or?
Yeah, in 5th edition.
No,
yeah.
you can if you basically it's you don't get to go. They just go first. So the surprise round basically is they don't get to like roll initiative yet. It is in there. I mean, some people do it more extreme.
Yeah, okay.
So it varies, but there is a surprise rule.
Yeah, like if you surprise that, then you can go first, and then you roll initiative.
Okay, well, maybe I was just not doing the surprise round stuff in 5th edition correctly, or maybe I just didn't utilize it enough.
It is wonky. It is very wonky, though.
It is.
But it is in here, right?
It's definitely better. It's definitely better in OSE for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, for the surprise rounds?
Yes.
Yeah. It makes more sense.
It makes more sense, and the rules are clearer.
Yeah.
They really are. I have advanced D&D 1st edition books, and they give you paragraphs for a simple goddamn rule. It's a simple rule. They give you paragraphs, dude. You have to read a novel before you get to... Because, I mean, Gygax and Dave Arneson, Gygax specifically has, like, high Gygaxian, his language, where, like, he absolutely needs to go into every single facet of detail.
Yeah.
It really doesn't need to be that way anymore. No. Like, you could very much simplify it. But anyway, so there's a surprise round. Then there's something unique called the encounter distance. The referee will then determine how far away the monsters are from the PCs. So now it's possible that the players may notice creatures and the creatures don't notice the players. And the distance determines your likelihood of escaping them or ambushing them or just sitting by and let them move on without drawing too much attention to yourself, especially if you don't want to fight a group of 36 heavily armored orcs.
Yeah.
So for like the dungeon, it's 2d6 times 10 feet. So, you roll 6 and 6 is 12 times 10. It's 120 feet away. Like, so they're 120 feet away in the dungeon. Like, you can't see them, but you can hear them way down the hallway.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that they're walking towards you. And you note that they're walking towards you, not running. So, I mean, it just seems like they don't notice you. You believe that they don't notice you right now.
Right.
Like, what do you do, at that point? At which point, any sides that are not surprised, roll initiative to determine who acts first. In this encounter, and it is an encounter, even though both parties are not aware of each other. The players did encounter something.
Right.
They're just not aware of the players. Based on the initiative, the players could just sit there and freeze for a moment because they don't act first, right? They don't know what to do. But those orcs are going to keep walking. And then the players have to decide, okay, it's our turn. What do we do? Do we turn back? I found this sewer grate. Maybe we should just like all jump into the sewer, like players, or do we fight them head on? Like, what do you, anyway, initiative and then actions. Any sides that are not surprised decide how they will respond to the encounter. Then the encounter is played out accordingly, and then one turn has passed. So there's only 5 steps in the beginning, and then there's only 4 steps because you don't roll surprise after the first turn.
Yeah.
Initiative is rolled every turn, which is something that 5th edition players may not be used to.
Yeah, not at all.
No, normally you roll a d20 plus your dex modifier, and that's where you are in the order forever, unless you delay your turn or do something else or something, or you gave somebody haste. I don't know. In this game, because combat is so fluid and so dynamic and so brutal, it is possible that you could be losing a battle, and then your party rolls higher initiative than the other group, and then you swing the entire battle in your direction.
Yeah,
and
it's a really cool dynamic to be like, oh, this party can go first, now this party can go first. Like, you never know how it's going to play out, or it could really screw you up where the monsters just keep going first, and
it's very like it's like a strategy like game, like it's like you're playing chess.
Yeah,
for sure. And then that's it. I mean, obviously, when you finally meet the monsters, right? Depending on if their disposition isn't immediately to like murder your faces, the monsters will have a reaction roll. And effectively, you roll a 2d6, I think, based on the monster, based on your reaction roll, like your charisma modifier that you saw in that thing before. And that'll determine whether or not they're hostile and they attack right away. They're unfriendly and they may attack. They're neutral, but they're uncertain of you based on your actions. They may sit there and like eye you up squintingly, like what are these people doing? Like, untrusting. They may be completely indifferent and uninterested and walk right past you, or they could be like straight up friendly and helpful. And that's what happened. That's what happened in your game, in our game. When you guys ran into the kobolds, you rolled a high reaction roll and the kobolds were able to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
Because they were at war with one of the other factions. I forget which one.
I think it was orcs.
That's right.
It was something like green skin.
It was orcs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We went to the little like kobold like den and all that.
Yeah, there was like a kobold hovel. But there's combat. You could choose to flee or evade them, or you could parlay. Those are like common actions that you can take as like a party who encounters a monster. The reason why I'm bringing all this up, not only because Mike, you asked, it's because I have to reiterate that not every combat or not every encounter needs to be a combat.
Correct.
Not every encounter needs to do that, dude. It really doesn't.
And opposed, like, that's a huge difference now thinking about it from 5th edition to OSC is most of the time when you're getting into an encounter in 5th edition, you are fighting. Unless the characters are like, well, can I try to roll this skill or this skill to maybe like talk through it? But the majority of the time when you reach an encounter in 5th edition, it is a fight. Yeah. In this game, you never really know. I mean, you literally could walk up to a mouse and it's just really freaking angry at you and it's going to attack you. Or you can walk up to a red dragon and you get that roll of friendly and they want to have a conversation with you. They want to tell you about their hundreds and hundreds of years on this planet and like they want to help you, like wherever you, like you never know what you're going to run into and how they're going to react to you. That's why when you say like not every encounter is a combat, it is very true in this game. Definitely. And it's just because of the rules of an encounter.
Right. And because there are no skill checks, right? Like as a player, there is a hint of meta involved, like metagaming, where like, oh, I look at my character sheet and I know I have a +9 or a +11 in my deception. So like I'm gonna deceive the person, because I know the chances are, like, the odds are in my favor
High.
because I have like a +9, +10 modifier in
Yeah.
deception. So like the DM, like, players can derail easier in modern RPGs than they can in. So the counter argument to that, just going back to skill checks real quick, role play your character.
Yeah.
That's it. And if the GM likes what you're saying, if the GM likes the ideas, these new ideas, because you're not basing it off of pre-existing notions of your character's abilities, because you have no hard data to support any of that information. You could simply know your character intimately, because you're forced to think outside the box. You're not forced to run by numbers.
Exactly.
Like, let's say you get into a counter and you do want to parlay. Maybe the face of the party, before anything happens, the face of the party is like, excuse me, like, he reaches out and like tries to talk to them, and then based on what he says to the GM, quote unquote monsters, the GM might be like, I like that. I like that. Okay, it works. Okay, it's just a matter of back and forth rather than hard numbers.
Right.
It's more of a give and take between the player and the GM, because you guys have to work together to collectively create a story for yourselves.
Right. And like in 5th edition, like as a DM, like, oh my God, this player just rolled a 24 in deception. I literally have to give this to them. It sucks. I didn't want to, but I have to because you rolled so high. Like, I have to give it to you.
Right.
In this game, you don't have to do. You have to be more creative.
Yeah, and
the GM makes that decision now.
That becomes a problem when you roll really high in 5th edition, because the GM can technically set the DC to anything they want.
Yeah.
But when you roll like 19 and you have a +11 or a +7 or a +8, +9,
I have to give this to you. Like, damn it.
The expectation from the player and the party is like, yeah, dude, you rolled a 19 and you have like all these, like, yeah, you got it, before the DM even has a chance to speak.
Right.
They just automatically assume they pass. And if you try to, you break their expectation, you shatter their expectation when you say, well, that wasn't high enough. What do you mean? I rolled a 19. I have a +11 and I rolled a 19. How is that not high enough?
Yeah.
And then you have to explain to them, like, you need to roll, like, it's impossible for you to do this unless you roll a crit. Mm-hmm. And even then, it's probably not possible. I don't know. This, at least, like, there's no argument.
Yeah.
There's no argument because there's no numbers.
Right.
So.
And then when you actually do get into like an actual combat in OSC, it's pretty easy. It's just like going down the list of like who does what, and then you just do it.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Basically, the players will declare their spells and their melee movement first. They have to decide, like, they have to declare. So this happens at the same step. With spellcasters, it takes a while for them to cast a spell. It's not just instant, right? It's not just, oh, it's my turn, I'm going to cast Magic Missile. Magic Missile might be the exception, but for the most part, if you're casting a spell, you have to declare, Bob, this is the caller talking to the DM. Bob wants to cast darkness over the bandit chieftain. Yeah. And then me, Sam, and Allie are gonna run together and charge that guy over there. Like, the declaring of the spells and the melee movement has to come first. They have to tell the GM what they're doing. Then you roll initiative. Because if you decide that you're going to cast a spell and your initiative sucks and somebody comes up to you and hits you and you break that spell, guess what? You lost your spell slot. And you have to commit to whatever actions you're taking. Then the winning side acts. There is monster morale. So as you start killing the opposition, the DM will roll morale for the monsters or the creatures. And if their morale breaks, they flee. Then the winning side will move, right? Because you're declaring your spells and you're declaring melee movement. Oh, I'm sorry. No. Melee movement. If you're already engaged in melee, that's when you decide your movement. The first step. Then it's just regular movement, then missile attacks like arrows and slings. Then your spell gets cast, and then melee happens. So, yeah. Movement, missile attacks, spell casting, because those are faster, and then melee is last.
Yeah.
And then the other side acts in their initiative order.
And then right back up to
And then right
the next
back
round.
up. Yeah. And
It's pretty simple.
it's honestly really, really easy once you get into it.
Yeah. It's way different, but it's pretty simple. It's not hard to change over to the combat style in OSE at all.
And just like in 5th edition, you roll a d20 versus their AC, and then you add any modifiers, and if you attack and it hits, then you roll damage. Blah, 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 blah. It's exactly what you're used to. It's just how that sequence per round is broken down is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Or if you're my character who was an archer, you shoot and you're basically making it so when the battle's over, you get to roll stuff to find those arrows, because I don't think I hit anything when we were playing.
Right.
So, yeah. I mean, and of course, there's natural 20s and natural 1s. It even says that if you roll a crit, it always hits no matter what. And if you roll one, it's always a miss no matter what.
The classic.
The classic stuff. Very, very, very easy stuff.
Yeah. So I know this was a long episode, but it needed to be, because OSE is big. OSE is massive. And I would love to ask you one more question.
Sure.
You made a good debate. You made a good side for OSE, but I do want to ask you, who is OSE for at the end of the day? Because it's definitely not for everybody.
Right.
And playing it with a few of our others, I know it's definitely not for everyone compared to 5th edition players. So who is it really made for?
I would say OSE and the OSR stuff in general is definitely for players who not only want things that are a little bit more freeform in some aspects and granular in others. I know that's very vague. But they want like raw, brutal, non-superhero, my player is a demigod and I can't die gameplay where it is very brutal. You can literally have a level 20 character who dies instantly because they fail a poison save.
Exactly.
It's for people who want to play with a group that relies heavily on team composition, and cooperation and communication and strategy, as well as like diplomacy. There is role play. You absolutely can role play in it.
Yeah.
Not to the insane degrees that you could do in modern RPGs for sure, but there are other classes and other races that you can choose from. You can play a goblin. You can play tieflings. You can play all these other classes that you might be used to. So if you want to still go down that role play aspect, sure, you can still do that.
Yeah.
So that kind of bridges that gap a little bit. It's definitely for people, like, if you prefer either Morrowind or Oblivion over Skyrim, this game is perfect for you.
Oh, that was a really good one.
That was good.
Wow. That was solid.
Yeah.
Wow, really nice.
I would even throw Daggerfall in there too. Like, if you prefer everything pre-Skyrim over Skyrim in terms like mechanically, not just graphics, but like how the games run, how they feel, the sounds, like the exploration. Like, if you enjoy those more than Skyrim, this game is absolutely perfect for you.
Yeah.
The OSR in general is perfect for you.
That should be like a quote on the book.
It should be.
Yeah.
My biggest takeaway from playing the game, it made me realize it's okay to die in these games.
Yes.
Like, I feel like a lot of people are scared to die in 5th edition, and sometimes people need to die, and it's okay, and you can move on and make new characters and not be upset about it. Like, it's all for the story at the end of the day.
Right, and I want to point out, like, the idea of having retainers in the game. Like, if your character dies, you could then assume the control of one of your retainers, and then with their stats determine what class they be.
Yeah.
They even have rules for naming an heir, so that way all of your personal belongings that you stashed away in a safe haven then get passed down to that character at level 1.
Yes.
So a deed, you know, like if you own buildings, if you own gold and treasures and all these things, and, you know, Gringotts, vault, bank, whatever, you know, you have something down there from your high level cleric and they pass it on to a level 1 character, you can do that.
Yeah.
So the character is gone and the memories still remain, but the character's dead, but now you have another person to sort of fill those shoes in with.
Exactly.
Without missing out on too much.
Mike, any closing thoughts?
Just that it's more it's definitely more strategic. I can't say that word. Strategic. Strategic.
Yes, you got it.
Vulgarities I have no problem with, but a nice word like that, I'm like, duh. But yeah, and I like that it's definitely like a back and forth, and you have to battle plan more. You have to really decide who goes first, who's doing what. Otherwise, literally, a wolf can kill your group. A really pissed off wolf. And the fact that it focuses in on exploration, it has, the whole thing feels more like older fantasy novels, where there's like 100 pages of the journey before they even like find a clue about the quest, like that kind of thing. So it's a slow burn, but it does catch on fire. You just have to be involved in it.
Right.
Yeah, the old saying, it's not the destination, it's the journey.
It's the journey.
Right. And it that's very much the case with OSC. It's the journey, it's the people that you meet and the people who die along the way and the people you honor in their memory as you move forward with this big mission in their name, and like, it creates a level of camaraderie even at the table that you do see in 5th edition, but there's something more visceral about the camaraderie that exists in Old School Essentials that just it cannot be compared to, I think. And you have to play it. You really do have to play it to understand, for sure.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Well, all right. Yeah. Well, there's OSE for you, baby. That's it. That is the end of season 1 of Talking Tabletop. We made it. So how this is going to work is we're going to be posting up a poll in the next week or two on our socials, and we'll give it I'd probably keep it up there for 5 days a week, something like that. And you get to pick between Mutants and Masterminds, Morkborg, or OSE, Old School Essentials. And whichever one wins, we will be doing a virtual tabletop version, one shot of that game.
And in case it's not understood, also, I'm not sure, because I'm not sure if we mentioned it, but the person's episode, they're the ones that are going to be running the one shot. So I don't know if we ever mentioned that.
Oh, right.
I think we did in the beginning, but we haven't mentioned it in the past few episodes.
Because I was thinking about it, but like the person who's pitching it, they're the one that's going to be running it.
Yeah, that's going to be the person running the game. The other two are going to play. So yeah, all right, cool. Well, good luck to the two of you for your games.
Good luck to the two of you.
Good luck to you too, man.
Yeah. And let's see who wins the first season of Talking Tabletop. Let's go, baby.
It's on.
But all right, thank you guys so much for checking out the Crithalla podcast. My name is Ol Skifleck, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Later.
Do I have like a 1 in 6 chance to like make sure I definitely don't die next session? Or like, can I have like a 2 in 6? Or
no.
I've been trying to open up this damn door for an hour now.
Okay,
later.
Okay, bye.